This is the second in a series of 4 lessons entitled Dare to Be Your Real Self. And the title of today's lesson is Taking Down the Defenses. Before I get into tonight's lesson, I want to make a comment about last week. Remember I gave you the assignment to find a fear and do it, to face a fear and enjoy it, remember? I wish I could share with you all of the conversations I've had with people who have come up to me in this week to tell me how excited they have been because they've faced a fear and they've gone into action to do something about it. It is so empowering when we dare to be our real self, when we step out of our fear-based mentality. Now, you have to remember that the assumption is that there is a real self in each one of us that does not know fear. There's a real self in each one of us that can do the most incredible things when we begin to believe in it and work from it. And the object of these lessons is to begin and to continue to be a part of this assignment of transformation from our fearful selves into the real self of us, from the dysfunctional self to that self of us that really knows how to live a functional life. There's a real self in every one of us. This morning, before I arose, I took the first 3 steps. My eyes were not opened when I found myself admitting that I am personally powerless to manage my life. Not was, but am. That none of the responsibilities that I have in my life am I personally capable of fulfilling or performing. Then, do you think this was a step in the direction of weakness? Absolutely not. It was an acknowledgement of the reality of my existence. And immediately I found my mind and my feelings moving into the next step, which was to come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to its order, could do for me all the things that needed to be done, could empower me, could guide me, could direct me. And that power, as I understand it, is the one that has formed, has shaped, and sustains, maintains this universe. The power that runs the universe can surely run my life. And I came to believe it and to feel it, to know that it was going to happen within the framework of this 124-hour period. And then I made a decision to turn my will, my mind, my very being, all of my responsibilities, including putting together this lesson, to turn it over to the direction of God. And it just made me feel so good I could hardly stand it. It took the total burden of being off of me. This did not mean that I was left without a sense of responsibility, because I am responsible for what I think and for what I feel, and that's exactly what I was doing, taking charge of the thought processes. Later this morning at breakfast, I wrote in my journal these words. After I was dressed, I spent about 30 minutes or more in meditation. And this is what I wrote. Up at 5:15 to prepare for Wednesday's class, Dare to Be Your Real Self. A wonderful 30-minute meditation in which my real self was empowered, was nurtured, was reassured, was guided, and filled with love and peace. I can't remember having a more empowering, conscious experience with God as the result of these steps, as a result of me practicing them, believing them, and having something significant, something very definite happening within my very being, something that I could feel, something that was real, Shortly after I was in my office and was preparing these notes, I found myself turning to the 8th chapter of the book of Proverbs, and it's the Lord God speaking to us. And God was describing God's self to us. God was telling us of God's own attributes and concluded with this statement, I have understanding and I am strong. I love those who love me. Whoever looks for me can find me. And another translation, when you search for me with all your heart. God is saying to us, you can find me when you search for me with all your heart. When the most important thing in your life is your relationship with me, and you're looking for me, you will find me. I have riches and honor to give, and the Lord God is telling us why we should look for and experience God. I have riches and honor to give, prosperity and success. What you get from me is better than the finest gold, better than the purest silver. In other words, what you get from me is better than what you're looking for. Whatever it is you're looking for, find me first. And the promise is, if you will find me, I will give you what I would have you have, and then I would give you what you were searching for anyhow. Now, that's a pretty good deal, I think. But if you don't have me, you're not going to find what you're looking for, and if you do, you won't be able to keep it. Makes the deal even better. I walk the way of righteousness. Righteousness? Oh, I used to dislike that word. Righteous people. Doesn't mean what we thought it meant at all. Righteousness means right use of your mind, the right use of your life. It means more than that. It means divine order. I walk the way of perfect order. And if you find me, if you experience me, then you will always be at the right place at the right time to have the exact experiences that I've planned for you. And not only that, you will know what to say, and you'll be empowered to say it, and the responses that you get back from the people in the world will be better than you could ever have achieved on your own. I follow the paths of justice, giving wealth to those who love me, filling their houses with treasures. Boy, what a marvelous, marvelous promise. I love those who love me. Whoever looks for me can find me when you search for me with all your heart. But where? Where would you find God if you were looking for God? Do you know where you would find God? There's an ancient fable that says that at creation God decided to hide his spirit where mankind could not find it. And so God was talking to God's self and said, I think I'll put my spirit in a cave at the highest mountain peak. And then God thought for a minute and said, no, man will surely make his way there easily. Perhaps I should put my spirit in the deepest recesses of the sea. And then God said, no, there's no place on this planet to which in time man's searching mind will not take him. And then God was struck with God's own genius and said, I know what I will do. I will put my spirit in every person. They will not think to find me there. They will not seek to find me there. Do you think that's a fable? No. It's the way it is. And it is within ourselves that we seek. And it will be within ourselves that we will find. But how do we seek? What are the steps that we take? What actions do we take? The Spirit is there and we have intellectually known it, but how do you go about making your conscious contact with God? How? And so God provided the Tao, which for centuries has been called the Way. And the Way in the 20th century has been the 12 steps, the 12-step program. And I would suggest to you that the most important thing that's happened to the human race in the 20th century has been the addition of the 12 steps to our human condition. The 12 steps, the way. The roadmap to God. The roadmap to a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. Last week we went through the first 3 steps, you know. This week we're going to take the next 4 of the 12 steps, and let's begin with this process of taking down our defenses. Carl Jung, remember Jung, the great psychiatrist? He said, there appears to be a conscience in mankind which severely punishes the person who does not somehow and at some time, at whatever cost to his or her pride, cease to defend and assert themselves and instead confess themselves fallible and human. We will not arrive at our destined place until we take down our human defenses. See if I can give you an example of what I'm talking about. There was a time in my life when I said with a smugness about me, I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. And somehow I believed it. And whether I believed it or not, I was out to make you believe it. I was never about to admit that I was wrong. It is so important that we be right. Jung went on to say, an impenetrable wall shuts us out from the living experience of feeling ourselves a person among persons until we stop defending ourselves. And it's not just defending ourselves against other persons, it's defending ourselves with ourselves. It's having this insane idea that we must always be right, that everything that we think is correct. And taking our own belief system, whatever that happens to be, and judging or testing every idea that comes to us, filtering. Our belief system filters out everything that does not agree with it. And therefore, we do not see with our eyes, we see with our minds. And we can only see what our minds give us permission to see. Why do you think that Paul said, I see through a glass, darkly? I don't see clearly. Because of my old ideas. Not ideas that are old like yesteryear, but the ideas that with which you and I walked into this room this evening. The accumulation of ideas. Someone once said that it's not what we don't know that harms us. It's what we do know that is not correct. It's the accumulation of incorrect concepts or partially correct concepts or purely human concepts. And it is not until we can let go of those old ideas that we're going to make a great deal of progress in our lives. Psychoanalysis, the last 100 years, is one way, a long and costly way of taking down that impenetrable wall that Jung was talking about, rock by rock. But psychiatry in modern times has gotten away from psychoanalysis and it has become a medication-oriented science now, primarily, in most instances, which is the exact opposite of that which we have sought. It locks us in. The Roman Catholic confessional has provided another way, and the concept behind the confessional is that of each person examining himself and herself, but oftentimes that has not been understood, and how many times have we gone to the confessional to admit a sin so that we can go out and do it again? That's not a criticism, but it just is a reportable fact. The most powerful tool, the most powerful system that has been given to us in the 20th century has been the 12 steps, and among those 12 steps, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th steps. Robert Burns, the Scottish poet, upon seeing an elegantly clad lady seated in the row in the pew in front of him in church one Sunday morning, noticed that there was a small insect crawling up the back of her neck, and she was not aware of it. And so he wrote an ode, a poem, to a louse. And among the stanzas of the poem are these. Oh, would some power the giftie give us? Would some power the giver give us? To see ourselves as others see us. It would from many a blunder free us and foolish notion. We have some foolish notions about ourselves. But you know, the giver of gifts has given us the power to see ourselves. We have just never used the power. Your mind has the ability to turn upon itself and to begin to observe itself and to see itself clearly and to see not only what it is, but also to see what it is not that we have believed ourselves to be. And it is the greatest, one of the greatest of our powers. We have that power. And no one can take our defenses down for you. You can have the best therapist in the community, the best counselor, the best sponsor. But in the final analysis, you will be the one who takes down your own defenses. And oftentimes, what we do with in therapy and and in counseling and in sponsorship is we turn our will and our lives over to someone else and say, "Here am I, fix me." And no one can fix you. Physician, heal thyself. Now, we need help. We need the support, the understanding support of each other, and we need to surround ourselves with the empowerment that comes when we find ourselves in the company of like-minded persons who are growing along spiritual lines. It's nothing more powerful. People are growing and changing. And people who've become very candid, people who no longer see themselves as a tragedy going somewhere to happen. People who can look at themselves and laugh at themselves. Those of us who are in recovery, in the beginning we can begin to look back at our lives and very fearfully look back, and then in time we can look back and smilingly look back, and then one day we look back and see that it was not a tragedy at all. It was the best thing that ever happened to us, and we can laugh. But can you laugh at yourself today? Can you look at the mistakes you've made today? Can you look not just at the outer mistakes that people see, but the mistaken thought patterns that were in your mind? Can you catch them? And the answer is, of course you can. If you make the commitment to, if you have a program that will help you to do so, and if you're practicing that program. And it becomes the only game in town. It becomes the most exciting game. It becomes the game of self-sponsorship and of self-transformation. Self not meaning of myself alone, but working with the Holy Spirit and working with people around me. Spiritual maturity consists in no longer being taken in by yourself. Do you believe everything you think? Without question. Do you? Then check it out. I mean, that's dumb. I just have to say it. And that's for all of us. You believe everything you believe? Better not. And when you start looking at it, something wonderful happens. You discover that you didn't believe it in the first place. Most of what we believe, we don't believe upon examination. Most of what we believe, we acquired from somebody who didn't even believe it themselves when they taught us. But we took it in, and we're loyal to an old belief system that has virtually no validity. And yet we go on seeking to accumulate more information. It is not new information that we need as much as it is to get rid of old information. Let me share with you an article from a very recent Ann Landers column. At age 35, a woman wonders why no man has wanted her. Dear Ann Landers, here's a bizarre letter for you. I'm 35 and I'm still a virgin. Granted, that's unusual, but it gets weird. I've never had a man tell me that I'm attractive. No man has ever held my hand or kissed me. I've had several male friends over the years, but no relationship progressed beyond the pal stage. It's not that I didn't want a romantic involvement. In fact, I went so far as to tell several men that I was interested, hoping it might help. It didn't. On a few occasions, I've even invited a man to dinner and to an event. Some accepted, but no one ever asked me back. And I'm intelligent. I'm well educated. I'm well traveled. I'm a good conversationalist and a fine homemaker. I have a successful career and several hobbies. I'm a talented needleworker and potter and have many outside interests. I volunteer with organizations and am active in my church. I'm well-adjusted and have a loving family. I'm no movie star, but I'm no dog either. You can tell the way this woman is writing that she is an accomplished person. I can't figure out why not one guy on this vast planet has ever been attracted to me. After 35 years of hoping, I'm becoming depressed. And I say that's wonderful, because now she's ready to do something about it. As a matter of fact, she's already done something about it. She wrote to Ann Landers. I've managed well on my own, but I'm puzzled and bemused at the emptiness in my life. Any ideas? A woman in California. Ann wrote back, "Dear woman, with all that you've got going for you, it's odd that you haven't connected with someone. It's got to be more than lousy luck. I suggest that you pose this question to 5 people who know you well. Start with 1 or 2 at work. Then ask your clergyman, your doctor, a relative, and a male pal. If you don't get any solid clues, go to a counselor. There must be a reason for your solitary existence. If you can identify that reason, your whole life could change. Good luck to you, dear." Now, as I was reading this column to you, I'm sure you thought, sure that you knew, that whatever the problem is, it's obvious to everyone but her. Isn't it? It is. There's a reason for it. It's not, I'm sure it's not halitosis. It's not that she looks any differently than the rest of us. She probably looks better than most of us. But the problem is not the problem. So the problem is what we would call the inability to see oneself. Could this be why that Plato, some 350 years before the time of Jesus, said, "The unexamined life is not worth living"? Could it be? The unexamined life. I'm absolutely certain that if this woman had a program of transformation and recovery, that if she could take a personal inventory and she could see clearly what the problem is and would shortly be shown what to do about it. The unexamined life is not worth living. And what she's saying is that to Ann Landers, that my life, as I'm experiencing my life, is not worth living. I've seen over the years so many successful men and women, successful in terms of their outer visible lives, their creative lives, their professional lives, be so successful, but so lost in terms of personal relationships and in the most important areas that were so dear to them. It is important to all of us that we begin this process of examining ourselves, and only one thing stands in our way, and it's called the Nile. Well, I said the Nile, it's really denial. The Nile is a river in Egypt, right? Denial is a state of mind. It is that psychological condition that exists within every one of us that prevents us from seeing ourselves. It's a refusal to acknowledge the truth or admit the facts, to not see the facts. The most amazing thing happens, though, when you go into action to begin to examine yourself. I remember a cartoon character a few years ago who exclaimed with great elation, "I have found the enemy, and it is me." You know, I went through the early part of my life looking for the enemy, and I found the enemy every day, and it was not me. It was him and her and them and it. And I was looking for a place to which I could repair myself, some other part of the country, a place that would be more favorable to me as I was. If I could just find the place that I could start my life all over again, then my life would be different, would it not? Absolutely not. It would not be different, because wherever it was that I went, I took me with me. And I was the enemy. And then one day I found the enemy, and it was me. And it was the greatest day of my life. Until I found that I was the enemy, I promise you, in my mind, I had a lot of enemies, and they were you. You. I didn't know you yet, but I knew somebody like you, and he or she was the enemy. Then I discovered I only had one enemy. One of the most remarkable discoveries of my life. That leads us to step 4 of these 12 steps to a spiritual experience. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that step does not say, made a searching and fearless inventory of our morals. The word moral in the sense of what works and what doesn't work. The willingness to begin to examine oneself. And let me tell you how it happened to me, but before I do, let me point out that you have some tools that will work well for you. If you have a Mastermind Goal Achievers Journal, there's a section in the back that's called Personal Inventory. And this Personal Inventory section will instruct you on how to begin this process of taking a searching and fearless look at yourself. A personal inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing journey into your own mind. The journey represents the beginning of a new way of life because it helps you move swiftly and directly toward increased self-awareness and an enhanced self-image. The object of your personal inventory is to take stock of your thoughts and feelings with total honesty, searching out the character flaws that have become obstacles to your growth. It will then be possible to replace those flaws with and build upon positive character traits. Your personal inventory will quickly make clear the reasons you're experiencing unsatisfactory conditions in your life because it will reveal the inner negative mental and emotional states of mind that control your outer circumstances. I wish I could put those instructions into the hand of the 35-year-old woman who wrote to Ken Landers. It goes back a number of years. And I was in recovery, and shortly after I began this process, I had a spiritual experience, a significant one that changed me, transformed me. Significantly altered my entire belief system. The world became a different place for me. It was a spiritual universe, and I was no longer a victim and did not consider myself to be limited by the circumstances in which I found myself in my life, in my world. I cannot tell you how wonderful life became from having been a living hell. And my spiritual growth was the single most important thing in my life, and I spent hours, often hours daily in meditation, never less than 60 minutes a day. Oftentimes more than that. I practiced the presence of God. I went fearfully many days out into my areas of responsibility, out in my work, and I tried to remember and often did that God was with me, and I had affirmation cards in my pockets, and I would pull them out and look at them. I knew that by taking charge of my thoughts and feelings that I was taking charge of my life, and it worked. And I took this step. I took it, but not so very seriously and not so deeply. And months passed. Almost a year passed. And suddenly one day this glorious life came to a screeching halt. One day, and I was back in my profession of choice, doing the work that I had done before this transformation took place in me. And on this day I was just paralyzed again with fear. And it was not an obvious fear, it was just that I was just immobilized. I simply could not go into action to do the things that I needed to do. And I did not understand why. And I prayed some more, and in the midst of my prayer I was shown to take a searching and fearless inventory of myself. And I got a legal pad, had one in my briefcase, and started writing. As a matter of fact, several legal pads later, 2.5 days, I ended up with my first true personal inventory. time does not permit in this lesson for me to go into the details of how that inventory works, but if you really are serious about these steps, I would suggest that you get 12 Steps to a Spiritual Experience, a cassette series that I did some time ago. It goes into more detail. I was shown to go back to the earliest days of my life. I categorized my life from the time of my birth until I was 6, until I started grade school, and the beginning of grade school to about the age of 12, of puberty, and from puberty until I was in high school, and then the high school years, and then in sections of 4 to 5 or 6 years following that time. And if you look at your life, it naturally graduates out into those different groups. And I started back at the beginning, and I looked at my life. I looked at my experience. And two things. I looked at the events themselves and at my reaction to those events, because the events oftentimes were not so important, but my reaction always was. And I was taking my personal inventory. And then when I got up to the present time, or that time, I then looked at the meaningful relationships that existed in my life, taking an inventory of myself and my reactions, that my true feelings about each meaningful area in my life, my professional life, my family, so that I was looking at all aspects of the being of Jack Boland. And I simply do not have the power to tell you how freeing it was. It was the most honest thing I'd ever done. I felt empowered. I was empowered. I was guided. I was shown. The sense of tragedy left me. The shame of the sexual abuse and other things that happened to me disappeared, or began to disappear. And then, about the very hour that I finished my inventory, I knew that the next step was to take step 5, admitted to God, to myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. I had these pages and pages of inventory, and I needed someone to share them with. And I thought, my goodness, who back home? I was working in another city at that particular time. Who would I go back home and share it with? And I thought, gosh, I don't know. And I was listening to the radio in my car, and a minister came on the air. Later I would have said he was more of a preacher than a minister, because I thought, this is the guy that I'll go see. And I made a telephone call and found out where his church was, and I drove over that afternoon and went in and knocked on his door and told him that I was a recovering person and I had this inventory and I needed someone to take a 5th step with. And it seemed to take him aback a bit, but he said, come on in. And I noticed that he was looking at me with kind of a strange look. And I was no more than 5 minutes into this review of my life with him, and I realized I'd made a mistake. It's well, the point I'm making is it's very important who you take your 5th step with. After about 20 minutes, I just gave up and left, and later did my 5th step with a person who really understood what it was that I was doing. This is not to criticize him. That poor fellow just did not know. But when I got into my inventory, he began to be embarrassed. I hadn't even gotten to the bad part yet. I mean, the very idea that someone could look at themselves in this way was foreign to him. He couldn't understand it. Why are these steps so important? Let me give you a metaphor that is so powerful for me. Years ago, and this is a true story, a London art dealer who made his living on buying works of art, usually at auctions and on the continent, bought a painting, Amsterdam. He took it back to his workshop in London and was cleaning it up, and that's what he did. He would buy a work of art and clean it up and maybe reframe it and sell it for 3 or 4 or 5 times what he'd paid for it. This was well trained, and so he was cleaning the dark paint. And as he did, a chip of paint came off, and he noticed underneath that chip of paint some bright color. Now he knew that many masterpieces had been hidden that way, had been stolen and hidden by painting over them. Then later, the art thief would clean off the outer painting, and the masterpiece would exist. And so he had a chance to take. Did he dare to take off the outer darker paint and perhaps lose the 125 pounds he had paid for it? Or take a chance? And he took a chance. And it really was a masterpiece. I've forgotten which one, but it was. And he sold it for over $1 million. That's exactly what we're talking about with you and me. Underneath these outer layers, these concepts that we have of ourselves, there's a real self there. There's a real being there, a masterpiece, a divine creation in every one of us. But we have to strip off this facade, this outer garment of the mind that keeps us from experiencing ourselves. And the ego, this outer self of us, defends itself. That's what denial is, this part of our mind that does not want us to look at ourselves, but want us to look away at the world around us and to blame and to accuse and to defend. Admit it to God. Well, God already knows. Well, wait a second. Admit it to God, to ourselves, to me. I just took my inventory. Do you know it's possible to take pages of inventory and not admit one word that's there? Admitted to God, to myself, in the presence of another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs, the exact nature of my emotional insanity. This is a necessary step in our spiritual growth. We cannot avoid it. We will not get into the kingdom of higher consciousness until we take this step. It's impossible. You don't have to be a recovering person. If you're just recovering from your humanness, the ability to see ourselves as we are and as we have been, and to admit it to God and to ourselves and to another human being, and then to become entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And at this point, we abandon our limited objectives and move toward God's will for us. Entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, the admission that I of myself cannot heal myself, and yet I must act as though I can. A paradox. Then step 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Humbly ask him. So very important to humbly ask. It is not that old poor miserable sinner syndrome. Oh God, I'm a poor miserable sinner. Yeah, I did these things. But I did the very best I possibly could under the circumstances that existed at the time. And unless I am changed, I will do the same things again. Unless you change me, because I do not have the power to change myself, and yet I must connect myself with you who is that power. Make me over into the person that you've created me to be, is really what we're saying. The willingness to be changed. Why the willingness to be changed? Do you know that even after taking, searching, look at ourselves, seeing the things that have defeated us, it is necessary to become willing to be changed, because so many of the things that we see that have really messed up our lives are things that we love. We love them. We love our defects of character. They have endeared themselves to us. We love our misery. We love our suffering. The last thing we'll ever give up on this planet is our suffering. Did you know that? We're so good at it. And it has been a system that has worked. The willingness to no longer suffer. The willingness to not be a crises creator. Most of the human race lives from crises to crises. And if there's not a crisis there, by golly, we'll create one. That's our modus operandi. And how many people have you known that the moment that they felt themselves free from guilt, felt guilty because they weren't guilty? I talked to a man this afternoon who absolutely refuses to enjoy his life because a lot of people still suffer in the world. As long as they're hungry people, he cannot enjoy his food. He told me so. That's an old idea. Probably came out of religious abuse. We've been sexually abused. We've been religiously abused, too. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. This week's assignment, and I dare you, I just dare you, I double dare you, to get a legal pad and to go into action, to examine yourself. I dare you to do it. To look at yourself. You can do as I found it necessary at that time in my life, and I want you to know I still vigorously and regularly examine myself in the written form. But start looking at yourself. Your mind will try to avoid it if you've never taken the step before. You'll want to go to sleep. You'll want to yawn. You will want to go down to the corner grocery. You haven't wanted to go to the grocery store in weeks. You want to do something besides doing it. Promise you that you will. But go into action to take an inventory. And then, having taken it, share it with another human being. Admit to God and to yourself exactly what you have written. Read it and speak about it. Elaborate. Become entirely ready to have God remove these defects, the shortcomings. And humbly ask him to do so. Now, those of you who have assumed this assignment indicate that you have by nodding your head. You're going to be so thrilled. It's going to hurt a bit, but you will rejoice. My all-time favorite story is that of the prodigal son. Remember, this prodigal person, we're all prodigals, whatever our sex. He took himself into a strange land. That doesn't not mean a different country. That means into the strange consciousness in which you and I found ourselves. And there he used all of his resources in riotous living. Self-will run riot is really what it means. He was going to do it his way if it killed him, and it darn near did. And he couldn't see what was happening to him. And then one day he found himself doing something that no respectable Jewish boy ever thought would happen. He found himself not only keeping the hogs, not being able to eat with them, he could only eat what they had left. And he came to himself. He came to his real self. Suddenly he began to see where he was, and the first thing he did, he said, I will arise and go to my father, which is exactly this process that we're talking about. And I will admit to him the exact nature of my wrong. And the moment that he went into action, there was an immediate response from God as his father came to him. Not across time and space, but the Spirit was there. And empowerment came. The solutions were already formed and were taking place. That is the program of transformation. That's what happens when we get honest with ourselves. Help comes. Peace comes. Sanity, meaning clear-mindedness comes. A new reality takes place. Not only do we see what the problem was, but we experience what the solution is. And that's the way it really is. Have a great week. You deserve it.